Welcome, everyone. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds. Just want to give everyone a chance to settle in, but looking forward to sharing the story with you about GBBN's journey. All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar, Harnessing the Power of Technical Data with Avail and Egnyte. My name is Nick Decker. I'm a construction practice leader here at Egnyte. With me are Michael Rensing and Randall Stephen. Michael, do you mind giving yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm Michael Rensing, the Director of Technology with GBBN Architects. I've been with the firm for about 4 years now. Grew up in the architecture and BIM world and recently became Director of Technology. Was with the firm and heavily involved in our uptake of both Avail and Egnyte.
Wonderful. And Randall. Oops, maybe on mute.
My name is Randall Stevens. I am the founder and CEO of Avail. My background, I'm architect by training, never practiced, but I've been in the industry working on technology solutions for about 30 years now. And happy to be on here and talk about our experience.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to learn more about and tell the story of GBBN's journey through technology adoption and making their processes more efficient. But Randall, do you mind sharing a little bit of information about what you guys see at Avail with technology fragmentation, if you will?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, this is a slide that I've been using in presentations actually the last couple of years. It's not really meant to be studied and read. It's meant to be an example just to kind of set the tone for the conversation. For those of you that aren't familiar with Avail, we call ourselves a content management platform, starting to use the words information navigation more about what we're doing, which we'll talk some on this call about. But the reason that we use this slide is this was actually given to us by one of our customers, and it's all the different applications that are in use in their workflows inside of that firm. So what I'll say is that a lot of our customers, enterprise, what we would call enterprise customers, it's not unusual to see somewhere between 100 and 200 different applications in use. So as we're going to talk about a lot of information and data, we're going to talk some about Revit specific things, but there's a lot of different applications in this industry that are driving and generating all of this information and content. So I use this just to set that tone when we're talking about the big problem that we're trying to tackle with Avail, which is, the end users, the people doing the work at their desk every day. This is what they're really, the big challenge is. You've got a lot of different information being generated from a lot of different applications, and how to store that and get back to it is writ large what the problem that we're going to talk about today.
Great. And from the Egnyte perspective, being a repository, we have done a lot of studies around the growth of data within the industry. All of our AEC customers, so design and construction, are seeing this exponential growth of information, and the data that comes along with that is obviously it's the nervous system, it's the critical path of how people share information, in projects. But as that data continues to grow, what do you do with it? It's far and away the largest industry as far as number of what we call file activity. So people uploading, downloading, editing, changing, deleting, those types of things. And then the file count and folder count themselves are both, ballooning as well. So it's really a problem that the people are staring down the barrel of, how do we solve this? How do we make sure that people access and utilize the right information, find that in a timely fashion, and don't, spend wasteful amounts of time in analysis paralysis trying to find the right info. So there's certainly more to be said here, but it's a growing concern. And so as we look to solve these problems, as technology providers, but also kind of sharing the stories of how firms like GBBN have started to harness that data as opposed to it being a problem, if you will. So with that, the overarching concept or what we're talking about today is that unifying of the project data. So oftentimes the term common data environment is utilized, and often, kind of taking that a step further, the interface at which, or the single pane of glass at which you can access that information is really important, and making sure that when you are working off of something that is the latest and greatest, it's the single source of truth, if you will. And if you do need to kind of back up or find the history of a piece of information or a decision that was made or a document, that you have that digital breadcrumb trail of how things have evolved over the course of a project. And so, between Avail and Egnyte, feel that we have a pretty good solution, and GBBN is kind of a wonderful example of how they've harnessed that information and provided a joint solution. So, I talked about the siloing of information, and with that, every project is new. Every project has a different project team, both internally and with project partners. And so how do you share that information in a timely fashion? And so I'll kick it over to Randall to talk about that joint solution.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. You used the words a second ago that we also use, a single pane of glass. I mean, the one way to think about the problem, and you use the word silos here. For years, you would hear people say that yes, siloed information is the problem, and we've got to knock down those silos, and there's got to be, this is getting too complex. I think the healthier way to think about it, silos are never going to go away. There's a lot of reasons why data is generated. That's why I put up that slide with all of the different kinds of applications. There's going to be new things that are coming tomorrow that you're going to want to take advantage of, and you're going to use, and it's going to create these challenges in the environment of consolidating and knowing how to get back to that info and data. So with Avail, that's really the large problem that we've tried to solve, which is I like to say, on behalf of the end user, their challenge is, I'm sitting here at my desk every day, not only generating this, but needing to get to all this information that other people have generated that I need to take advantage of in my workflow to do the kind of work that I'm doing. And one of the challenges is where that content is becomes a real challenge. So I think, what you'll see us doing with Avail is trying to make it as simple as, if you have access to it, if you've been authenticated to have access to this information, you should be able to go to one interface. That's traditionally been, Windows File Explorer, or someplace to go, looking around in different places. But we all know over the years that there's, multiple drives, and now there's cloud locations and on-prem, and all of these different complicated things that have been, evolving over time as we've needed to have our information stored in different places. So, I think that, what we're going to show today is that there is the possibility of being able to start to separate those concerns, the security and all of the things that you need in a common data environment, and where you need your data stored, and how that's being managed from that standpoint. And then ultimately what we've been trying to do with Avail is really concentrate on that human problem, which is, as that information is scaling up, as a human, that I only have so much ability, or even know so much. How do we solve that part of the problem? And that's really what we've been trying to do with Avail. So maybe next slide, and I'll kick this over to Michael to really talk about, because GBBN has been a long time. They were Avail launched in 2017. GBBN became a customer that year, so they've been a long-standing customer using Avail as a solution inside of their environment. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Michael, to kind of talk about what the experience has been with how you all use Avail and what you've done with it.
Thanks, Randall. If you go to the next slide, yes, thank you. So just a bit about GBBN Architects first. We have offices in 5 cities, mainly based in the Midwest, but also in Beijing, with our primary markets being healthcare, community development, so multifamily housing, some commercial and workplace work, higher education, as well as facilities management. Throughout the year, we do approximately 250 projects with over 150 employees on staff. One of the best projects I've worked on for GBBN is a brand new critical care tower in Cincinnati for the Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And just a couple of weeks ago, I found myself actually a user of that building. So, it's funny seeing a project that you've worked on and then experiencing it as an end user. But it's a great project, and the Children's Hospital here in Cincinnati does great work, and glad that I was able to make use of the building. If you go to the next slide. Prior to having Avail here at GBBN, the big challenges that the staff faced was an efficient way to find the data that they needed. We use Avail primarily for our Revit content, and trying to track down the thousands upon thousands of families that are needed on each project is a very daunting task. Prior to Avail, and actually still with Avail, we've got everything located in folder systems. But trying to find that information in those folder systems is cumbersome. Those of you that do not know CSI divisions, it's the construction management classification system. It's based on numbers. It ties back to specifications. We use that as a folder structure. So breaking everything out into CSI division to manage the location of families and as a way to find those families. But this is very daunting for new staff. So bringing in somebody fresh out of school, they do not know CSI, and trying to find, say, something as simple as a metal door becomes very difficult. Am I looking in 05 metals? Am I looking in 08 doors? Just bringing the staff up to speed on where to find everything and how to decode. That's taking away valuable time that they can be spending on the project instead of spending it searching for content to use on their project. The next slide, thank you. So with Avail, it provides powerful search capabilities. No longer do the staff have to spend time back in the file explorer looking for content, searching by name. Maybe they are, misspelling something, getting something wrong, and that search takes forever and returns 0 results. So not only are they becoming frustrated with that search and not being able to find their content, it's wasting time as well. Avail allows you to index all of this content. But besides just the content, you can get information within the files itself that becomes indexed as well. So now, not only can you search based off of, say, the file name, you can also search based off of the file version, or in this example here, the Revit category. So I'm searching here for casework category, and everything is now filtered by that category. So I can quickly get to what I want without even searching. So I can filter down. Avail uses a tag system for all of this information. So I can click on a tag to filter to that, and then augment that with a keyword search. So it will then start searching my filtered content to get to that content that I need very quickly and very specific. Next slide. There we go. So with Avail, it not only provides this great search capability, but there are add-ins for our design applications. So we utilize at GBBN Rhino, we utilize Revit, and these applications all have specific add-ins to search Avail with. So there is a desktop version, there is add-ins in the design programs themselves. You can search through either one. Most people don't want to leave their design applications and utilize the add-ins, which just makes their workflow that much easier and more fluid. So the content functions are tailored for the application-specific needs. So if I am in Revit, searching Revit content, I get extra add-ins or extra features added in. So items that pertain to Revit, I can get in and see all of the content in a family. I can see all of the content in a folder. I can load in drafting views directly from Avail into Revit. It adds all of these just nice little extra features that makes the end user's life that much easier. And on top of that, the AEC industry is very graphical. It's a visual field, and Avail provides extremely large previews. I can get in, and as the screenshot shows, I can actually read what's going on in this detail. So without even opening this file, I can see its contents, read, and see, yep, this is the one that I need before adding it into my project. So this is just another layer of like quality control that I can get the content that I'm after and validate it before actually loading it into my project. And as I said before, we've got the ability to search the contents of the files, not just the files themselves. So this, if I'm looking for content that uses specific content, I can get that granular and into it to ensure that I'm bringing the right content into my project.
Maybe I'll jump in there just for a second, Michael. For those of you that are new to Avail, just a couple of things just to help you kind of understand the way that this works is one of the strong, I think, points of Avail is that we don't take possession of the content. We kind of sit in front of it and just provide a new way to access it. So that, we're going to talk about how this works with Egnyte as the primary storage location behind the scenes of where all this data actually is. Avail just sits in front of that. We do, though, as Michael, suggested, that we do a lot of pre-processing sometimes on this technical content that allows us to bring forward these kind of high resolution previews and to prep that. And so when we started working on Avail, we started looking at what are I call it the frailties or the weak points of doing this through something like Windows File Explorer. When you're working in a traditional file system, you're creating folders and you're creating file names. Those are basically the only two tools that we've all had at our disposal in a typical file system to be able to store and ultimately get back to it. So what you can think about what Avail's doing is we're kind of, I call it separating the concerns. There's storage, and those, as Michael said, they can use CSI divisions as a nice structured way to ultimately store that data in their network. But on the front end of it, that's not necessarily the way that people think. It may be one way that people think about it is through CSI codes, is to get back to that. But there's a lot of other ways that you ultimately want to slice or dice getting to that information. And that's really the technology layer that Avail's putting in front of this info and data. And then with this extra concentration on understanding that almost all of this content and information is very visual in nature. All the architects, designers, and engineers in this market are used to, they want to see this info and data. That's sometimes as important as the words that they'll type in is that what I'm looking for? So we like to describe the way that we've approached search is what we call progressive search. It's like you may start with typing in, what you're looking for. Our job at Avail is to bring back, which could be a very voluminous amount of information. If you type, the number one search term is the word door. We see millions of searches across Avail every year from our customers. The number one search is door. I was actually just looking yesterday. This year alone, we've seen almost 5,000 different search terms that included the word door. So you get a long tail of very complex things that people are looking for. So we call it progressive search because you're rarely going to type in one thing that gets you to exactly what you're looking for. So what we've done with Avail is we bring back, based on the first basic search, information that's related to that, but then try to bring back more information that helps that person now filter down or narrow down from that, what could be still be a large body of content that's coming back, of information that's coming back. And then that's where the visuals become really important, because now it's a combination of not only narrowing down the focus of what I'm looking for, but actually, human visual acuity is one of our most advanced features as humans. If I can see that, you can see things in these, no pun intended, details, in a detail or in other kinds of information or content. And as humans, we can really, if we're familiar with this content, we can touch and see things. So we've tried to combine and really make what Avail does on the front end, this combination of not only, text-based search, but combining that with the visuals to really give a real strong front end interface. So Nick, if you'll flip that slide, I'll kind of, tee this up then, Michael, with these tools in place, how has this really started to affect those workflows inside GBBN about how people worked and maybe what do you all think where is this going to lead in the future?
That's a great question, Randall. So GBBN's workflows have improved with Avail. We're no longer constrained by just what the file system provides us with. We can quickly find the information that we're looking for, spend less time searching and filtering, and spend more time on our projects, delivering quality and outstanding projects for our clients.
Great.
So the second part, we implemented Avail prior to implementing Egnyte, and the challenges that GBBN faced before Egnyte. So as you know, more and more employees are working remotely, and with the start of COVID, this became a big problem for us. So prior to COVID, employees would be in the office almost 100%. We had a VPN solution in place that mostly sufficed for our late night, weekend work. You could get on. Network access was, suboptimal, but it worked. And the data is no longer just accessed from the confines of the office. Seeing with COVID, people are working, out of their home. They're working out of libraries, out of coffee shops. The office is no longer where all of the work happens. We found, with COVID and our return to the office, that we needed to have a 100% cloud-based solution. This, is no longer something that's nice to have. It's now a necessity that we have to be able to access our data, all of our information from wherever we are. If we're on a job site, if we're in bed working, we need to be able to access this data. And the on-prem data storage is no longer a viable solution for us. Next. So the Egnyte and Avail solution together, no longer is our content just locked in to our on-prem. When we made this switch to Egnyte, we had to upload all of our data to the Egnyte platform. We did this all behind the scenes, and we made the switch over Thanksgiving weekend. That's when we cut off our old data storage and moved 100% to Egnyte. And the end users never noticed a hiccup. The data, we didn't have to repath anything. Avail sat on top of our new Egnyte platform and was able to pick up. We didn't have to re-index. It knew where the data was now and was able to search that content, load that content for our users, no matter where they were. So this new solution with Egnyte and Avail allows us to do our work from wherever we are. All that we need is an internet connection, and we are able to reach our data, search our data, find that information that we need, and find it quickly. This together enabled us to, kind of hide that tech complexity from the users and just allow them to get at the work and get their work done. And one of the other beautiful things that Egnyte provides is the security and governance feature. Security is built into Egnyte. The secure and governance feature gives us this window into all of our security across all our platforms. It provides us, information on where people are logging in from and alerts us to unusual activity. So if there is somebody logging in from Russia, we get an alert, and luckily these are all denied, but we see Egnyte really showed us the amount of attacks that we are all under every day. All of our Microsoft logins that are being attacked from various locations across the globe that we do not have employees at. We're alerted to this every day. We're alerted to unusual file activities. So if there's a user that may be looking to move and starts taking data from the company, we're alerted to that and can see what's going on with that. Either put a stop to the data egress from our systems, or just start that conversation and see what's going on. And next slide.
Yeah, so if it's okay, I'll jump in
Sure.
here. I love that concept of, abstracting away or removing the technical complexity from these workflows, and allowing your users to, just get the work done. They didn't actually notice a difference between the cutover. The work just, kind of continues as usual. Can you speak to how the workflows have changed or improved over the course of the deployment of Egnyte and Avail together?
So the workflows with Avail and Egnyte have allowed us to really expand our geographical reach for employees, as well as retain other employees. We've had some that have moved from a city where an office is located, and we've been able to retain these employees. They can work on the projects from wherever they are, as if they are located right in our office. It's been great for retention, for quality of life for our staff.
Fantastic. So, Michael, do you mind kind of taking us through the kind of broader sweep of business value as you've realized it as a GBBN?
Certainly. So, one of the big takeaways from using Egnyte and Avail together is that we are no longer constrained by our physical location or VPN bandwidths, and we are able to actually eliminate VPN connections now, which helps with overall security, that we don't have, one more entry point that we have to watch. So that has been fantastic. The company itself, we are no longer constrained by the locations of where our office are. We're able to add talent wherever we find them. We've added an employee that's based out of Philadelphia. We do not have an office in Philadelphia. We have one in Pittsburgh, which happens to be on the other side of Pennsylvania, but we're able to pick up the talent where they are. And one of the best features is we have been able to securely share data with partners on our project. We had a large hospital project, and we partnered with another architect that was local to the construction of the hospital. We were able to share our entire file folder structure with them for that project. And on top of that, we were able to share Avail with them. So we were sharing not only the entire folder structure of all the project content, they had, full access, read, write capabilities to that, but they were also able to utilize Avail and our content. So we were able to provide them with our data to use on the project. That made gave us the ability to deliver a very cohesive project. We were all using the same content. We were all keynoting with the same files. So all of the data going in had already been checked, had been verified, been given the green light on our end. They were able to use it, search through Avail directly on our network and find the content. This has been a huge improvement over projects that we have partnered with other architects previously, where utilizing the same content has been not as easy. In fact, it's been a nightmare on previous projects sharing content and getting the right content. So this has been a great help in moving that project forward.
Great. Awesome. So I do want to kick it off to the questions portion. I've got a couple that have come in, but as viewers, feel free to chime into the Q&A window. The first one that came in for you, Michael, is around this concept of data duplication. So how does GBBN handle duplication across repositories? And what did that look like before deploying these systems together versus after? And I assume it refers to duplicated of files that are identical in different locations, those types of things.
So prior to using Egnyte, we had all of our data. There were data stores in each of the office, and they replicated amongst each other. We had to take all of that data and upload it to Egnyte. Egnyte has a built-in deduplication system, and we realized that we had quite a bit. I believe it was somewhere in the range of a few terabytes of duplicated data on our network that we were unaware of. A lot of it is duplicated PDFs that may be stored in multiple folders, but is the exact same. So we didn't realize that we had this problem until we moved to Egnyte, and Egnyte actually provided a solution for us to handle this. So they just out of the box provide data deduplication for you.
That's great. As far as the implementation went, so can you speak to the process of training the end users on both systems and what that potentially looked like as you rolled out?
Certainly. So honestly, the rollout of Egnyte was very, very easy. It requires basically a desktop application to be installed to map the drives as Windows drives. We took a morning to roll that out when we cut over. There was not much training. We did do some in-house training on all of the extra features that are provided on the Egnyte platform, all of the web searching, the version rollbacks of files, all of this more powerful features that they didn't have access to before on our previous system, but we could just let the users go and run with the new system really without any training, and they wouldn't have noticed really any difference in their day-to-day work. As for Avail, we do constant training on it and best practices throughout the year, but bringing users up to speed, there was some initial training on the rollout, and with new hires, using the two systems together, there didn't need to be any additional training because of the just ease in the back end of moving the platforms. The data just remapped, and we were able to just keep working as is, and the users saw no difference.
That's great. Can you speak to, and I'll kind of editorialize this one. Oftentimes the authoring softwares themselves will evolve over time. So, what you may use one day for a certain file type, whether it's PDF or, CAD files or what have you, those things can change or be more fungible, I would say. Have you had any experience with changing out the authoring software, and has that affected the repositories themselves and finding of this data in through the Avail interface and within Egnyte?
I wouldn't say that the changing of our authoring software has really changed our workflow and how we utilize Avail and Egnyte. Our primary design tool is Revit, and in that push for cloud first, we moved Revit to the BIM 360 platform prior to moving to Egnyte. Our other design tools, we utilize Rhino quite a bit, switching from SketchUp a few years ago. Most of our other design platforms, the file structure itself, just our folder structure lends itself to how we store. Most of the content is purely based in a project and lives within that project folder. We don't find ourselves reusing much Rhino content from project to project. It's more that Revit content that we utilize. We do go back to Revit projects and will harvest content that was created uniquely for that project when we realize that we can reuse it on another project. So we will utilize Avail to extract that data from Revit files and then go through a cleanup process, vetting process, and add it to our content repository and index it for future use.
I love that concept of harvesting past work, right? Like, you want to take advantage of what you've already done on these and being able to repurpose that and find it in the right time, clean it up and then repurpose it in some sort of standard folder would be extremely powerful. Randall, I have a question that came in for you. Michael obviously mentioned the concept of, AEC and particularly architects are very graphical. What does that look like from an Avail standpoint? Certainly we talked about the Revit piece, but are there other aspects of the Avail platform that harness that graphical nature and indexing these various different file types beyond just Revit?
Yeah, let me. I was going to kind of jump in on what Michael, but this.
Oh, please.
Well, it transitions pretty well. I think the one thing that we didn't kind of state about the way Avail has when we first started working on the problem and what became Avail as a solution was really the file system. The Windows File Explorer is not a great way when you're trying to look for information. I think we can all agree that, we've lived with it now. Most of us are old enough for 40 plus years, and it just hasn't really evolved. So we really set out, right, to understand, kind of pick apart what the real problem was and try to get to the essence of that so that we could try to put a better front end. So I use the word, unconstraining. It's like when you're using folders and file names as a way as your primary organizational structure, you're constrained by that, and it was limiting. So we kind of broke those constraints. What is interesting as this has evolved, and this goes back, Michael, both of you were using the word harvest. We actually have a tool that we call Harvest. What we started to understand was that the same data problem, information problem that existed on a network or a file system also exists in certain applications inside the files themselves. So Revit, I'll just use Revit as the great example. Revit, sometimes there's certain data in Revit that has to be stored in an RVT file. Drafting views, legends, schedules, material, there's all this data that's not a family per se that lives as an individual file. And it was, I like to say, stuck inside that RVT file. And you were stuck to having to consume it through whatever interface that Revit Autodesk gave you to consume that. And that was typically just, hey, here's a big long list of these names or words. And what we then started to understand was, hey, we can take the same concepts that we've used to solve viewing and navigating information on the network. Why can't we apply that very same concept to the data that's inside the file? It's just, it's another form of storage, right? It's another place that information is stuck. So we created these tools called Harvest, and we're actually expanding that beyond Revit because we're finding that there's information stuck, not just in the, hard to get to on a network out of a lot of information, but actually stuck inside of these files themselves. So for example, the visual nature of that is that we can now pre-process that RVT file, abstract that information away from it. It still has to be stored there. That's just the nature of the beast. But we can abstract away what it means to navigate, search, find, and see that information for the end user. And it breaks that constraint of where they were in that RVT file. So to kind of go beyond that about where I'll just step all the way back from what our customers are doing that we see in Avail. We've seen over 1,000 different file types being indexed and managed, accessed through Avail. So back to my original slide, lots of different applications with lots of different kinds of files and data being produced that ultimately is sitting in Egnyte in that file system and needs to be retrieved by different members of the team at different times. So what we're seeing as far as the kind of categorization of the data, a lot of what we would call technical content, a lot of Revit content, a lot of AutoCAD, MicroStation, Civil 3D, Plant 3D, lots of architecture, design, engineering applications across the board that have that kind of info and data. For us, it's about half of the data that we see is in those kinds of applications and file formats. The next largest body of information that we're seeing is actually photography, images. So obviously lots of either site, it's either marketing information and marketing data, finished work that's being, now needs to be accessed and gotten to, but also just, site visits. And, everybody's walking around now the site when they're doing their site visits, grabbing photos and bringing them back in that project context. So all of that, that's the next largest. And then there's documents, there's PDF documents, Word documents, all of those kinds of, documentation that's being produced. That's the next kind of big chunk of information that we're seeing. And Avail, our goal was, I didn't state this at the beginning, but our goal across those 200 different applications was support at some level all of that. So we have native PDF viewing that you can do. You can index a URL. I like to say if it's digital, Avail can help you see it and manage it. And I was pulling up on my phone. We were talking right before the call started. Nick was in London last week, and I just missed him by a week. I was there a couple of weeks ago. But one of the favorite things I do when we go into some of our customers' operation. I'm like, go to the last project, because there's always a project folder, right? Somewhere on the network. Go to the last project that you finished, right click on it, and go to properties. And I won't show you, but the one customer that I was visiting over there was like 49,000 files in 3,600 and some folders. That's the complexity that this industry lives in. That's one project. There's that much data that with multiple, obviously, people trying to get to it. So until you got like Avail on the front end of that is what I call file folder hell. It's like 3,600 folders. That's the basically structure for storing the information. One of the things that we kind of acknowledged is you ultimately have to store the data somewhere, but when you're using hierarchical folders, you're constrained to that wants to live in one place at one time. The way you get back to it wants to be unconstrained, and you want to slice and dice what it means to get back to that. So that was a lengthy answer to that, but that's what we're seeing. A lot of it is very visual in nature, and then ultimately you just want to slice and dice through all that data as quickly as you can to get back to what you're looking for. So,
no, I absolutely love that, and that's, as putting my end user hat on, coming from the industry, I remember trying to find things, and I no joke, was 17 folders deep, and it, you kind of, beyond just the fact that you're hitting Windows file limits on the string of characters that you can put in your file name, it's just, how do you replicate that to a new user? How do you provide that tribal knowledge that, hey, if you need this one piece of information, how do you find that?
Well, I think,
remember the 17 folder structure to get to that point.
I think it's important, and Michael, I'll get you to comment. You kind of touched on this, but one of the things that people forget is you use the word tribal knowledge. There's knowledge that needs to be captured inside of your operation. That should be an asset. It should be viewed as an asset. When those things you've got knowledge workers sitting there pumping their brain power into these applications and into all this, what ends up being data around these projects. Well, now, right, the people that worked on that project have a lot of good tribal knowledge. I think I saw a stat that, turnover in this industry, just job turnover, runs like 12-14%. So now imagine that's not only 12% of your workforce leaving, but you got to replace them. So you got new people coming in that have no tribal knowledge about that project. So now that info and data needs to be retrievable in the way that they're thinking about it, not in the context of the project that I worked on, but that this is information I need to be able to get to. So I think those are really interesting dilemmas, right? Where I think the solutions that we're putting in place are starting to address that, or helping to start addressing. Michael, maybe you got other thoughts along those lines.
That's always a big problem, is bringing new staff up to speed on the office standards. And I don't think there is a real good answer to that problem. It's got to be something that is passed down, or kind of shown the ropes on where everything is. Then you get this good handle on where it is, and just keeping consistency on the way that the offices behave is probably the only way that you can handle that. Just finding stuff from project to project, as long as it's consistent, is the best path forward on that one.
Well, and I think I'll just kind of add to that because I can literally walk into any architecture engineering firm in the world and predict that their network is going to look like a bunch of libraries or reusable assets over here. And then there's another part of the network that starts to, at some high level of folder, where the project information is going to live. BIM 360 and some of that cloud might be changed that a little bit, but we can pretty much predict that that's what it's going to look like. I think when you start to think about that, it's like no new person coming into this operation, especially if your folders are like by the project number in some obscure way that's been encoded, ever go spend time digging around in there to try to find something. Some of the new things that we're doing with Avail is, a lot of our customers are using it for library management per se, but we're beginning to move over and say, why can't we put this same set of tools in front of your historical project data, your current project data? It's all about information navigation. So we ought to be able to apply that. What gets interesting there, I want to talk with my hands, but ultimately you're wanting to slice and dice, and I call them vectors. It's like when you're looking for a piece of information, you're literally looking for a needle in a haystack. You shoot once, which might be the first search, but it's that second piece of information, which it's the correlation of those two pieces together, now begins to really narrow in on a small body of content. Well, that could be in a project that was done 5 years ago that we're now able to pinpoint that, and you didn't even know that project existed or that GBBN worked on it. So I think we're not quite there yet. We're working on some new tools to allow that to happen, but I like to say there's little nuggets of gold that are back in there that has never been worth spending the time to uncover. But as we put these technologies together, I think we're going to be able to actually get more efficiency and actually mine those little nuggets of gold. And collectively, those can be meaningful. Whereas, the juice was never worth the squeeze about going and spending that much time to root around in that one thing. It's like, I'll just spend 20 minutes recreating it when as opposed to 30 minutes going and trying to find it. So that is going on at scale, across this industry. And that, for us, that's why we get excited about this, is like, wow, there is this inefficiency that's going on. It's always 10, 20, 30 minutes at a time, but across literally millions of people across this industry. And can we begin to attack that through these technology solutions and human solutions that help people, manage what is this onslaught of information? So,
yeah, the thing I would add to that is the expectation, or the bar at which people are comfortable with technology is set by consumer tech. Like, it's the Googleification, if you will, of, hey, I know I can go to the single repository and find anything in Google. Why can I not do that with my work stuff? Like, it's the same process. And in fact, I live more of my life, in my work repository than I do in my Google.
Yep.
And so, but, Google has allowed people, for several years now to, let me put a search term and I'm going to find new, click on the news tag or the images tag, and it just starts to feel comfortable. And, I need to put a date constraint and I need to do X, Y, Z, and stacking those pieces of information really allows you to find the needle in the haystack, if you will.
Yep.
Now, what, as a technology provider, we have to keep pace with that. We have to make sure that people feel comfortable, in their work repository, finding the information that they need, just like they do when they're at home.
Yep.
And it's, I think, between what Avail has built and, Egnyte centralizing a lot of this and providing the structure for, for those files to live in a single repository, I think is the right step in that direction, if you will.
Yeah, I think that consumerification and it's a positive pressure on us that are building B2B, applications in industries like this. It's like, yeah, why is this so easy at home, but when I go to work, this is painful? So we really take that to heart and try to create a really simple is our key mantra. If it's not simple, people just won't use it. So we're trying to really concentrate on how simple we can make it, and then beautiful. That's back to the design of the interface, the visuals, that people are used to nice things. They've got nice things when they leave the office. Why can't they have nice things when they're at the office? And hopefully that's what we're helping to bring a little more joy to the desk, right?
Yeah. We did have another question come in, Michael, for you. Can you speak a little bit more to the flipping the switch over to Egnyte from your existing repositories and the process of re-indexing or lack thereof of your information as you came to a new repository?
Sure. So with the Avail application, all the content that you add to it needs to be indexed initially. So when you do those searches or filtering by the tags that are applied, the database behind Avail knows where all of this information is. With the switch to Egnyte, we kept our data in the same place. So those paths really didn't change in regards to Avail. It's now hosted on a different It's hosted in the cloud, it's hosted on Egnyte as opposed to our on-prem. But by keeping the same pathing, Avail was able to see all of this content in the same location and just sync right up without the task of going through and re-indexing, re-adding all of the content to Avail again.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Michael. You know, in your all's use case, you were able to keep the address, call it, of the file didn't change from one system to the other. Therefore, from Avail's perspective, it didn't skip a beat. We do have customers that sometimes make these kinds of changes, and then ultimately the address does change. So you can, in Avail, you can re-index it, but we've also helped customers, you know, kind of behind the scenes in the database, you know, across their entire, you know, if we know that the path and the address is going to change at the front end of it, we can actually do behind the scenes to cure that. So, you know, we help customers in both situations to do that kind of planning. Hey, what's this going to look like? If something's going to break, is there a way that we can easily, you know, make it not break? And sometimes that's just us helping behind the scenes in the database to get some stuff. And we're always trying to build some better tools, right? There's complexity ultimately to the IT side of this and where data is and how we're accessing it. But I think both companies, and I think Nick will agree, it's like between Egnyte and Avail, we have great customer success teams that help our customers solve problems every day. That's all we do. And I think that's why it's been such a great relationship. So
yes, definitely. Actually, working with both Egnyte and Avail has been fantastic. You guys are both always quick to answer any questions and jump on and close out any support tickets that we do have. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Great.
We invest in it. Yeah, we invest. It's not easy, but we invest in it. We know it's important.
Right. Well, we're at time. Michael, do you have any parting comments from your side around your story with GBBN?
We're always looking for, you know, new technologies like Egnyte and Avail to just simplify people's work life and make their job easier. That removing any boundaries or frustrations that they have, we get better results, better projects are delivered, and our staff has a, you know, better work-life balance because of it.
Love that. Randall, any parting comments from your side?
No, just, you know, I think our relationship, Nick, with Egnyte was that we had a common customer that was actually having a problem. And, you know, we collectively rooted that out and fixed it and got it solved together. And, you know, that's not always common between technology providers to have that. So to me, it's like a breath of fresh air. Where we sit with what we're doing is an ecosystem. And I think that, I think in the industry, the more that we understand that and are open and willing to work with each other in order to provide solutions to Michael and everybody at GBBN, that's just great for the industry. So I just want to say, you know, thanks to you and your team at Egnyte. I think it's what it makes it's healthy. You have to work like that, and we don't live in silos. This is all part of a broader set of tools to solve these problems. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Randall. Thank you, Michael. And I would echo, you know, as a technology provider, it's not going to be one solution for everything. Like the days of just being on Microsoft and doing everything in Microsoft or you know, name your vendor is gone. And so because of that, you know, we do need to partner, you know, with the technology providers with the specific needs of our customers and making sure that we're solving the real problems for the industry. Egnyte being a horizontal solution, you know, we have kind of a base platform that works for everything, but, you know, our concerted need to solve for, you know, a content heavy industry like architecture and construction is really important. It's a big focus of ours. So I really think, you know, the GBBN team and you know, Michael, you've been fantastic to work with. Same as well, Randall, you and the Avail team have been wonderful. So with that, we'll go ahead and close it up, but appreciate everyone who joined us today. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Egnyte and Avail. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.